There's always the next round, Shannon. We'll see.
Go.
President Biden plans to announce his Supreme Court nominee before the end of February. Let's go. You're looking at the possible nominees at the top of the short list. There you see them, all black women. This is on the heels of Justice Stephen Breyer's announcement. The president restated his commitment to nominate a black woman to fill the seat. Our D.C. correspondent, Bofta Yimam, joins us live. And Bofta, with midterm elections around the corner, this could give him some momentum. The president could help him win back some voters, especially black voters who have grown apathetic.
Absolutely. There is a renewed optimism within the Democratic Party, Sharon, within the base, within those folks who are volunteering inside of states where they know it's going to be a tough midterm elections. And so the prospect of an African-American woman being selected as the nominee certainly does raise hopes and get folks going again, which is what you need ahead of the midterm elections, especially because so many were disappointed with key agenda items like voting rights, like police reform, which were both either defeated or stalled, and who knows what's ahead. Now, President Biden has said that he has been looking for the past at least several weeks, reviewing potential nominees very seriously, their bios and so forth. And Vice President Kamala Harris will also be part of the process, he says, in tapping a nominee. President Biden says he's going to invite senators from both parties to offer their ideas and will also consult with scholars and lawyers. But with an evenly divided Senate, split Senate, there is pressure to move things along quickly. Anything could thwart a nomination process to shaky ground for Democrats, like a senator falling ill or dying. Now, if Democrats stay united, stay unified, they will not need the GOP support and can win confirmation on their votes alone. Justice Breyer, as we know, served on the court for nearly 28 years and was known for bringing hard data to connect with conservatives on key issues like abortion rights. In fact, he wrote the majority opinion in every major win for abortion rights over the last 2 decades. Take a listen to what he had to say after his announcement.
Of course, people don't agree. But we have a country that is based on human rights, democracy, and so forth. But I'll tell you what Lincoln thought, what Washington thought, and what people today still think. It's an experiment. It's an experiment. That's what they said. And Joanna paid each of our grandchildren a certain amount of money to memorize the Gettysburg Address. And the reason that what we want them to pick up there, and what I want those students to pick up, if I can remember the first 2 lines, is that 407 years ago, our fathers brought up, created upon this here a new country, a country that was dedicated to liberty and the proposition that all men are created equal. Conceived in liberty, those are his words, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He meant women.
Choosing someone to sit in the Supreme Court, I believe, is one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has. Our process is going to be rigorous. I will select a nominee worthy of Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence and decency. While I've been studying candidates' backgrounds and writings, I've made no decision except one. The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
Now, Senator Schumer wants to move the nomination process quickly after Biden makes his selection. So the timeline might look like Biden, end of February, announces his pick. And then by the end of March, early April, we could see that nomination process go forward. Sharon?
Yeah, Bofta, so before we let you go, what is the GOP's reaction to Biden's announcement of a black woman filling the seat?
Well, some of them have been saying on Twitter or in their own publicly released statements, things like, we shouldn't pick based on background. It should be based on criteria. And President Biden has said that he's still going to be looking for extraordinary qualifications, experience, integrity, and character. But they're making a point to mention that race shouldn't come before other things like upholding the Constitution. And so they're making that point. But, there could be a handful that do support the nomination, because we know that some of the top women who have been selected as part of this possible shortlist that has been released this week, we know that some of them were supportive of them, I should say, in the lower court nomination process, and they were Republicans. So it's possible you could get a handful of GOP support. They're going to need more than a handful. But nevertheless, we do know that there could be some who do support. And then Senator Mitch McConnell did come out with a statement saying that the president should not outsource this important decision, he said, to the radical left. So they're making these statements. They're clearly saying that race should not be the thing. It should be everything else before that. And so they're taking a stance, taking some of Biden's words and flipping it a little bit, as we expect as we're going into the midterms. But I will say that, look, they may not fight this as hard as we think. And the reason why is because it's not going to change the ideological balance on the court 6-3. And they've got other things that they need to do in order to help win the midterm elections and get their momentum. So they may not focus on this as much as many people think they will because of where they are right now. And they do feel like they have the momentum going into the elections.
Yeah, they'll focus on it, though, long enough to muddy some things up so they can use that down the line during campaigning. And it's interesting because race and gender have been a determining factor in all of the other Supreme Court nominees and ones who have made it to the bench. Whether people realize it or not is another matter, but both to buckle up. It's going to be interesting and exciting, too. It's exciting for so many people. Our Bofta Yimam live in D.C. We do want to continue the conversation on this. The White House is telling Republicans to work in good faith and don't play games.
I think we also should be clear about some of the games that we're already seeing indications of out there. We have not mentioned a single name. We have not put out a list. The president made very clear he has not made a selection. And there are, if anyone is saying they plan to characterize whoever he nominates after thorough consideration with both parties as radical before they know literally anything about who she is, they just obliterated their own credibility.
Now let's get to our chief foreign affairs correspondent and co-host of The World Tonight, Nayyera Haqq. Good morning to you, Nayyera. Can't think of anybody better to dissect and discuss the games ahead with us. There has been such a renewed focus on the makeup of the court, very conservative court. Can you walk us through, I guess, the political strategy for both the Biden administration and the Republicans, because, of course, it's vastly different?
It's vastly different than it's been in decades, actually. So we have not only a 6-3 majority conservative court, we have 3 of them appointed by President Trump, with Neil Gorsuch being the last one that Mitch McConnell said he was not going to allow President Obama to even have a hearing on his nominee. And that opened up seats for President Trump to put his imprint on the court. Those 3 justices are actually very young, so they're not due to retire anytime soon, and we're already seeing the impact that's had on the court, Sharon, with decisions now that have limited access to abortion rights. We have decisions coming up on affirmative action. We know this court is already against the Voting Rights Act, so these are all issues that deeply affect communities of color. Having a black woman on the court is a very big deal, and hopefully it will be over the course of a lifetime, but it does not change what's going to come down or happen in the next year or two. Now, the political calculus that you asked about, it's not just about the Democrats holding the line. You do have Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, where it might be a question mark of whether they're both trying to tack to the right and gain some Republican support heading into the midterms. Question marks about both of them, about whether or not they actually want to remain Democrats or if they're trying to play for becoming Republicans if the Senate goes over to a Republican majority. But you also have Dianne Feinstein in California, who is one of the oldest members of the Senate, who helped support Amy Coney Barrett in her way through and ushered her through the Senate. So Democrats may not be all lined up behind President Biden as they need to be to make this a smooth nomination.
Yeah, a lot of Democrats still not over that. But Nayyera, the days when a nominee might not I guess, are the days over when a nominee may not vote as expected? You think you know everything about these nominees, but former Justice David Souter, remember, was nominated by George H.W. Bush. He ended up voting with the liberal wing of the court.
And you had Justice Kennedy, who ended up being a bit of a swing vote. The challenge we have now with the conservative court is that the Federal Society, the Federalist Society, a really conservative, strict constructionist organization, has groomed people specifically to have them ultimately land on the bench. And so they have been laying the groundwork for this moment in which they had these three people on the bench for nearly 30 years. And it's something Democrats fell behind on really focusing on the courts. The right wing energized around pro-life issues, but it affects all other civil liberties as well. Democrats are a little late to the game of focusing on the Supreme Court, but the counter argument now that Democrats and folks on the left are making is to expand the court. The Supreme Court did not start off being with 9 people. So if you add, say, 3 more and make it a 12-person court, can you have more balance? It's something President Biden was asked to do. He studied it, issued a report, but it may be something, if Democrats keep the majority or want to keep the majority, that they need to do in order to maintain their power base.
I guess in the remaining time, I want to talk about what really is a sacred choice, but should it be a solo choice? Because here you have Representative James Clyburn, who admittedly put President Biden in the Oval Office. I believe he is touting Michelle Childs. Judge Michelle Childs is perhaps the best selection out of all of these extraordinary women who are being talked about. How much power does he have in helping to select the next nominee?
You know, the conversation around Supreme Court nominees ends up being about qualifications, but at the end of the day, it is still a political choice that is subject to the vote of a political body in the Senate. And the South Carolina congressman has a lot of sway with this administration. He also made the point that diversity is not just about skin color and gender, but also the fact that the nominee he is advocating for did not graduate from one of the elite colleges. She is highly qualified, but she's an HBCU grad. That would be nice to have on the court as well. The other nominees, though, have already been confirmed by this Senate, so it'll be hard for folks like, say, Senator Lindsey Graham to vote against somebody based on qualifications when he just voted that woman onto the federal bench a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it is a high-stakes game. Really chess, right? It's chess at this point. Nayyera, Haqq, thank you so much. We'll see what happens. Always appreciate your insight.